Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a story of betrayal, courage, and the strength to reclaim one's truth. It's the journey of a woman who, after years of love and trust, discovers that the very people she loved and trusted the most, her husband and sister, had been hiding a devastating secret. As the truth unfolds, she chooses to take control of her own narrative, revealing the lies that had been carefully constructed. Join us as we dive into this powerful tale of resilience and the lessons learned along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. I never imagined that a family dinner could feel like a courtroom. But that evening, it did. Jason, my husband of 7 years, tapped his wine glass with his spoon, a gesture he had made countless times before. But tonight, the sound of the glass chiming against the spoon was not the usual prelude to laughter or light-hearted conversation. It felt like a signal, a moment when everything was about to change. My heart began to race, but I did my best to maintain composure. The chatter at the table stilled as all eyes turned toward him. I watched him closely, noticing how his hand trembled slightly as it held the glass. His eyes darted briefly toward my sister, Lauren, sitting across from me, before he quickly looked away. His gaze settled somewhere above everyone's heads, avoiding direct contact with anyone. A flicker of guilt? Maybe it was just my imagination. After all, how could I have known? How could I have known that in the very room where we had spent so many joyful moments, he was about to destroy everything we had built? Ladies and gentlemen, Jason began, his voice not quite steady. I have an announcement to make. There it was. The words I had been dreading. The ones that would shatter the life I thought I had. The truth, as harsh as it was, would soon be laid bare. I'm filing for divorce, he continued, his voice growing firmer now, as if he was gaining momentum. I never planned to announce it this way, but since everyone's here, I think it's time. I could see my mother's mouth drop open, her hand flying to her heart. My father, always so stoic, frowned in confusion, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. The air in the room grew thick with tension. But Jason wasn't done. He wasn't finished turning our lives upside down just yet. There's more, he added, his voice almost apologetic as he reached across the table to take Lauren's hand. I watched in shock as he held her hand, his thumb gently stroking her skin. My feelings for Lauren have grown, he said, the words tumbling out. We've been trying to fight it for years. But sometimes love chooses you. I felt my world crumble. Every part of me, every ounce of trust, every little bit of hope I had held onto for the last 7 years, fell away in that moment. This was no longer a betrayal, it was a planned destruction. I could hear my mother whisper, "Oh my God," and then a deep, unnerving silence descended upon the room. The quiet was deafening, but I couldn't let them see the pain. I couldn't let them see the storm swirling inside me. I couldn't let them see that I had known for months. They all turned to look at me, their eyes full of expectation, waiting for me to break down, to cry, to scream, to throw something. But I didn't. I simply nodded, the smallest hint of a smile crossing my face, as I calmly said, "Please, everyone, check your emails right now." A few moments passed as my family hesitated, clearly confused, but one by one, they began pulling out their phones. Jason, looking increasingly uneasy, glanced between me and his unopened email. "What emails?" he asked, clearly thrown off guard. "I sent them just before dinner," I replied, pulling out my own phone, feeling strangely calm. Everyone should have received them by now. The room was quiet for a moment as family members hesitantly checked their emails. My cousin David was the first to open his eyes widening as he scrolled through the contents. My mother, too, gasped as she saw the evidence. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Lauren, her face turning pale, grabbed her phone with shaking hands. Jason's face twisted in confusion. But I could see it, the unease growing in him as he glanced at his unopened email. I stayed quiet, watching as more family members opened their emails. Their expressions shifted from shock to disbelief to something far darker, anger. disappointment, disapproval, but not at me. No, it was not me they were angry with. They were angry at Jason and Lauren, the ones who had betrayed me. I knew that I had only just scratched the surface. The emails they were reading contained only a fraction of the evidence I had gathered. They had no idea yet just how much deeper the betrayal went. How much more devastating the truth would be. I had spent months collecting every piece of information. Every detail. I had watched them both with quiet determination, seeing through the lies they tried to weave. But it wasn't just the affair that hurt, it was the way they thought I would play the victim. The way they assumed I would collapse into despair, accepting their narrative without question. I didn't need to say another word. The truth, in all its painful clarity, was now before them, and the world they had so carefully constructed was about to come crashing down. As the stunned silence stretched on in the dining room, I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was no longer the woman who had cried and pleaded for the truth. I was no longer the betrayed wife clinging to whatever remnants of her marriage remained. No, I had evolved into something else, something cold and methodical. I had spent months preparing for this moment. It wasn't just the surprise emails I had sent to my family, but the quiet, meticulous work I had done behind the scenes. I had become a different person entirely. Someone capable of seeing through the lies and focusing only on the truth. Jason and Lauren had no idea how deeply I had dug, how far I had gone to collect evidence, and how thoroughly I had documented their affair. It all started 6 months ago, on a night that should have been like any other. Jason had been working late again, leaving me at home to go about my usual routine. But this time, something felt off. I had no suspicions that night. Nothing to suggest that anything was wrong. Yet, as I sat at our kitchen table, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I picked up his laptop to order dinner. An innocent enough task. But when I opened the browser, it automatically restored his previous session. My eyes froze on the screen. There, right in front of me, was a series of emails between Jason and Lauren. The messages were explicit and unambiguous. "I can't stop thinking about you," Lauren had written in one message. "Last night was amazing." Jason's reply sent a chill down my spine. "We need to be more careful. I don't want to hurt Emily." I read through the entire thread, my heart pounding in my chest. But somehow, I felt removed from the situation. I wasn't reacting emotionally, I was processing. As if this were a case I was investigating at work, not my own life falling apart. These were not just words. They were the truth, documented in black and white. 2 years of deception, playing out right under my nose. Without me ever realizing. I closed the laptop without ordering dinner. Jason was due home soon, and I had no idea how to face him. But I knew, deep down, that there was no way to go back. Once I had seen what was hidden from me, there was no unseeing it. When Jason came home, I tried to act normal. I greeted him with a smile, kissed him on the cheek, and asked about his day. But inside, I was falling apart. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. How could I have missed the signs? How could I have trusted him so completely? But Jason didn't give anything away. He smiled back at me, asked how my day was. And for a moment, it felt like everything was okay. It was as if the man who had been having an affair was the same man who had kissed me goodnight every evening. I felt a sickening realization wash over me. This man, the one who had held me close, who had shared his hopes and dreams with me, was capable of lying to my face with such ease. For the next few days, I tried to gather myself. I wanted to confront him, but something held me back. A part of me still hoped that there was an explanation, that this wasn't what it seemed. Maybe they had never gone through with it. Maybe it was just a fantasy. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The evidence was too clear. The emails, the messages, the dates, they all pointed to a long, carefully concealed affair. That was when I made the decision. I would not confront them yet. Instead, I would document everything. I would build a case. A case that would leave no room for denial. I had a skill that they didn't count on. I was a digital forensics specialist. I knew how to gather evidence, how to track electronic footprints, how to piece together the puzzle they had so carefully constructed. And I would not let them rewrite this story. Day after day, I watched them. I logged every suspicious behavior, every phone call, every late-night meeting. I watched as Jason and Lauren grew bolder, more careless. They thought I was oblivious. They thought they were getting away with it. But I knew better. I knew exactly what they were doing. And soon, they would know that I knew. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a deliberate campaign to deceive me. To manipulate everyone around us. Jason and Lauren had made me the fool. And I was done being the victim. The evening of the family dinner arrived with a surreal sense of finality. It felt as though I had been preparing for this moment for months. Even though I had no idea it would unfold in such a way. Jason and Lauren had no clue that my investigation was nearing its conclusion. That their well-crafted narrative was about to be completely dismantled. The truth was about to be revealed. And no amount of carefully rehearsed speeches or false sincerity would save them now. I had spent the past few days preparing, ensuring that every piece of evidence was organized and ready for presentation. I had carefully crafted a series of emails, each one tailored to its recipient, designed to expose the truth in a way that couldn't be ignored or rewritten. My father, for example, would see how Jason had borrowed money from him while secretly diverting funds to a private account. My mother would see how Lauren had used her to create alibis, allowing them to carry on their affair under the guise of family gatherings. Every lie they had told, every secret they had kept, was now documented, sealed, and ready for the world to see. I had also prepared a master email, one that contained everything. The complete timeline, all the evidence, and a detailed account of how I had discovered the truth. This email would serve as my reference during the inevitable chaos that would follow. I had learned that there was power in being prepared, in ensuring that nothing was left to chance. In that moment, I was in control. As I walked into my parents' home, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of calm. My heart, which had once been consumed by pain and betrayal, now beat steadily in my chest. I had lived in fear for so long, afraid of what I might discover, afraid of what might happen when the truth came out. But now that the moment had arrived, I wasn't afraid anymore. Jason and Lauren were already there when I arrived. They sat together on the couch, their hands intertwined, a silent statement of their newfound relationship. They had become comfortable in their deception, testing the waters of public approval. They didn't realize, though, that they were about to be exposed. Their shared history of lies was about to be revealed in front of the very family they had deceived. I exchanged pleasantries with everyone, my mother's tight hug lingering a bit longer than usual. "I'm so glad you came," she said, her voice strained. "This means so much to your father." I nodded, offering a small smile, but inside, I felt a mix of sadness and strength. I had to do this. For myself. For the truth. Dinner proceeded like any other family gathering, awkward silences, half-hearted jokes, and the polite, surface-level conversations we had all grown so accustomed to. The real conversation, the one that had been simmering beneath the surface for months, was waiting to explode. As dessert was served, Jason cleared his throat, a gesture that, once upon a time, signaled happy announcements. But now, it felt like a warning. I knew what was coming. He was about to launch into his speech. The one where he would try to justify his actions. To paint himself and Lauren as victims of an impossible love. And just as I had expected, he began. "I know this is difficult for everyone," he started, his voice smooth and practiced. "But Lauren and I have fallen in love." The words hit me like a slap in the face. But I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative anymore. This was my moment to speak my truth. Just as he continued, his voice growing more confident, I felt a slight panic stir inside me. The carefully timed emails I had scheduled to send hadn't gone through. My heart skipped a beat as I saw the error notification on my phone. The emails hadn't been delivered. The weight of the situation pressed down on me. But I refused to let it overwhelm me. I quickly grabbed my laptop, navigating to my email program with calm precision. As Jason spoke, I clicked send on a single email to everyone in the room. The room was filled with the soft sounds of phones buzzing as the emails began to arrive. I could see confusion spreading across the table as family members began to open their messages, their faces transforming from shock to disbelief. "I've prepared some additional context for Jason's announcement," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. "Just some documentation I thought everyone should have." The reactions were immediate. My father, his face darkening, was the first to speak. "What is this?" he demanded. Jason reached for his phone, his face contorting in anger. "What are you doing, Emily?" "I'm showing everyone the truth," I replied, my voice calm and unwavering. "Everything I've discovered over the past 6 months, organized for clarity. Hotel receipts, text messages, financial records, the complete history of your relationship with Lauren." The room was silent except for the occasional gasp as more people read the evidence. Jason, his face going pale, desperately tried to scroll through his phone. His planned narrative of star-crossed lovers crumbled with each swipe. "This is an invasion of privacy." Jason spat, his voice rising in anger. "You can't just." "I actually can," I interrupted calmly. "Washington is a one-party consent state for recordings. Our shared accounts were well shared. And most of this information was gathered from devices and accounts you left open in our home." My mother's voice trembled as she looked between me and Lauren. "How could you do this to your sister?" she whispered, her words thick with disbelief. The facade had crumbled. Their carefully orchestrated love story was exposed. And now, the truth was out. As the truth unfolded before my family, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The weight of months of secrecy, pain, and betrayal finally lifted. I had fought for my dignity, my truth, and I knew that from this point forward, I would never be the woman who quietly accepted lies. My journey through this dark chapter had transformed me into someone stronger, more self-assured, and resolute. Jason, his face now pale with disbelief, tried to regain control of the situation. But it was too late. The narrative they had carefully crafted for themselves had disintegrated in front of the very people they had deceived. My father, coldly silent, simply nodded. My mother, on the brink of tears, looked at me with a mixture of regret and pride. Lauren, on the other hand, had no words. Her carefully rehearsed victim act had fallen apart, and she was left with nothing but the weight of her actions. I stood up, slowly, with a quiet grace. "I think it's time I go," I said softly, gathering my things. My father stood beside me, his arm around my shoulders, guiding me out of the room. As I walked out of that house, I felt a sense of finality settle in. It was over. The betrayal had been exposed, and the truth could no longer be manipulated. 3 months later, I filed for divorce. The documents were signed, and I began the process of rebuilding my life from the ground up. It wasn't easy. It was never going to be. But it was mine to rebuild. As I looked out over the Puget Sound, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the water, I knew that life would go on. And with each passing day, I was reminded that sometimes, the most painful truths lead to the most profound freedoms. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more life stories.